All right, everybody, let's start out. First of all, thank you very much for joining this webinar. We are more than happy to have you in this session. First of all, let's present ourselves. So my name is Mikkel. I'm from the Cloud People, broadcasting to you from Denmark. Our office is here in Aarhus. Very happy to be here, and I have Tapio with me as long. Tapio, maybe you could just introduce yourself briefly.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Tapio Silvera. I am a trusted advisor here at the Cloud People. Been a ServiceNow consultant and worked with ServiceNow for approximately 10 years. And yeah, I'm broadcasting to you from Kuopio, Finland.
Excellent, Tapio. Thank you very much. I do really look forward to hearing your presentation today, ITSM to CSM, and what's that all about. Very excited. So first of all here, you have joined our platform. It's Livestorm. Just to give you a brief introduction to this stuff, we got 4 functions down to the right-hand side of your screen. That is people. You can see who else is attending right now. We have polls, so we have some questions coming in during the presentation. You will have them here. You can post your response to that poll, and then we can get to know you a little bit better. It's always nice to make sure that we are aligned with our audience today. So feel free to give that input to us. We have the questions here. You can post a question. We will collect that at the end of the webinar and do questions. And you can also chat with us in the chat bar, and we will have that as we go along in the conversation. Please feel free. We're here for you today, so feel free to chime in, comment, ask questions, so on and so forth. We'll be more than happy to dive into those questions or topics. So yeah, don't hold back. It's always nice to understand better what's happening at your end of the screen. I'll monitor this chat while Tapio is talking, and then I'll let you know, Tapio, if something is urgent to be addressed, right? Reach out to marketing@thecloudpeople.com if you have any trouble with your attendance here, or they will try to help you out as well. So enough about the platform. First off, for those who maybe don't know TCP, the Cloud People, a brief introduction. We're a ServiceNow consultancy company working with mainly ServiceNow. We do have some Google as well, but it's mostly ServiceNow. We have the pleasure of being represented in quite a few countries, growing fast. So it's an EMEA-based thing with some United States and some Brazil attendance as well. So we are proud to say that we are elite partner from ServiceNow, and yeah, we have some different badges right down at the basement there. You can take a look at yourself, but of course we strive to have the knowledge that's needed to be a interesting partner in this landscape. Some of you I know we work together with every day. Some of you are new to us, but we are more than happy to elaborate on how we maybe could play a role in your ServiceNow landscape, making sure that you gain true business value out of the platform. So we do drive a lot of webinars around different topics. You can check that out in our event page on our webpage. You might have been there when you registered this, but if you have any ideas or suggestions on topics, you feel free to throw them in the chat as well. But anyway, without further ado, today's topic: why CSM, or going from CSM, considering CSM from ITSM, and the differences between those two modules and the business outcomes available to us. Yeah, that's what we're gonna be addressing this. I guess it will be, I don't know, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, not more than an hour. I can promise you that right away. But let's see how it goes, right, Tapio? So first off, I will have the opportunity to give you some perspective, some context around how CSM can make a difference if you understand that context that CSM is working within. what to think about, what does really matter in terms of business outcome, in terms of customer and end user experience. What is it that we need to provide when we work within customer experience, and what can ServiceNow do as a tool to move you closer to the customer there. So that's kind of setting the scene for why this discussion is relevant, at least why we perceive it to be relevant. You can make up your own mind, of course, but CSM is a really exciting module on ServiceNow. It has quite a few benefits, looking for my part. I will dive into that, and then I will hand over the baton to you, Tapio, going through some differences between the ITSM processes, some CSM point of view, and so on and so forth. We will wrap it up in the end, making sure that you got some key takeaways from our conversation here, and then we can just have a short Q&A session, hopefully providing some meaningful input to your questions, if they may be there. Okay, so I guess that's it for an introduction. So let's dive right in. And oh, there we go. The first poll: is CSM relevant, or are you using it in your organization today? So feel free to submit your vote there, and you can check out the response during the poll. So why is CSM relevant in a business perspective? Why does it matter? Well, I've seen, and I know, Tapio, you'll be diving into, you could maybe say, the service provider context of handling different processes from an ITSM perspective. So why is CSM interesting? So to me and to many of the customers I work with, CSM is really interesting because it allows us as a vendor or as a service provider in a broad context, not just IT, but as a service provider in a broad context, to manage all the different endpoints to our services that we provide to our customers. And it does that by enabling us to have different entities and making sure that we can manage those entities within a out-of-the-box context. We can digitalize those services that we're providing every day in a very meaningful manner, handling different layers and different aspects of the business model that is underpinning our business. That means we can have objects and handle entities such as customers and consumers. Of course, it's a B2B or B2C context, right? We can also make sure that we can handle stuff like overarching organizations with daughter companies, or you could say complex intercompany relationships. And of course, we have a partner level as well. All of this is encompassed in the CSM module, the underlying data model, and the whole thought process that has been the background for establishing this module. And it makes us able to kind of model how we deliver services in a way that we can manage both the customer experience, but also the business side of things, which means entitlements, contracts, service level agreements, monitoring of our relationships and our interactions with the customer. It's also omni-channel, so we have a consolidated view of all these kind of aspects towards the interaction with the end customer, whether it's a company or it's a person or whatever it is. And I think that's really exciting because it really enables us to drive functionality and build business outcomes in a very feasible way without too much fuss around building custom solutions or tables or what have you. You can just lean in to the functionality there and really strengthening your way of working towards delivering your services, whatever they may be, in a digitalized way that's pretty easy to actually onboard and then start gaining value from right away. So that's worth taking a look at if you're not already there. I can see from your responses in the poll that we have a balanced audience today. Some of you guys have been using CSM and some are not. So and of course you can always leverage CSM to a specific degree, right? How much, how little do you leverage of the functionality, and that can change over time as well. All right, so when we talk about CSM and the business model that we want to support, it always comes down to what is the customer experience, right? I think it was you, Tape, who said you never want to have an angry customer in the end, right? Frustration turns into no
Yeah,
business, right?
a confused customer is
Yeah, that's true.
really easily an angry customer.
That's very true. So what we want to address here is basically, and this slide I have from a guy, I should mention that actually, a professor from CBS that's called Mogens Bjerre. Mogens Bjerre has been working with us a few times. I had the pleasure of having a presentation with him from the earlier days, but we actually have him presenting in a few weeks in Copenhagen. It's free to attend. It's called the CX Day. You can find it in our webpage. But Mogens is presenting a lot of stuff on how do we define the customer experience, what constitutes a great customer experience, not from a tool perspective, but from a you would say a theoretical point of view, right? And one of his slides, I got it here. It's basically the different perspectives on what constitutes a great customer experience, right? Because from a customer perspective, a great customer experience, it's all about emotions. It's all about how does it feel when you engage with us as a vendor or as a service provider, whatever. What is the overall feelings or the emotions around this? What do we remember from that transaction or that interaction? And we tend as an organization to focus very much into what is it that needs to be done. What kind of tasks do we need to complete in order to make sure that we have delivered on that request? But if we're really strong in building great customer experiences, we are good at combining these two perspectives. That means that we don't have to only deliver on the core task, on the core request. We actually do need to make sure that it's delivered in a pleasant way, that the experience around interacting with us is good, and that it's worth remembering, right? If you have an experience that is worth remembering, you are more, you have a tendency to recommend us as an organization. You have a tendency to kind of being ambassador for our brand when we talk to other organizations or users, right? So we want to make sure that the experience is great, and we can combine these two. So how do we go about this? Well, of course, I will just highlight that on the CX Day, we will deep dive into this. It's like 2-3 hour sessions where 3 sessions where we will go deep on this. But the broad picture is that make sure that your employees have the oversight, the data, all the overview that's needed for ensuring that they know who are the customer, what is the history, what is the overarching landscape around this customer, to really make sure that we can deliver not only on the task in front of us, but actually making sure that the A to C experience is a great one. So if we're good at that, we create great memories and great emotions around the interactions with our company, and that in turn creates a great customer experience. And I think that's really worth chasing because it has so many business benefits to our collaboration with our end users, even if it's a company or a user or a person, right? So another way of kind of perceiving this is, so we don't only have one interaction as a customer or as a business interacting with us as a vendor. We do have plenty of touch points, and we want to make sure that the full customer journey is mapped into CSM, and we're actually able to adapt that within the CSM module. We have a functionality that's called playbooks. We have the agent workspace. We have different aspects in the module that really supports the kind of customer journey thinking, looking ahead, see what's going to be needed next for fulfilling this request. How can we be proactive in our communication towards the customers on how are we going about to address their needs, right? So if we empower the employees to be great at collaborating around satisfying this request or the need, then the better the user journey will be. So we can leverage customer journeys as a way to map out how many touch points do we have interacting with our entity, whether it's a user or a company, and then ensure that in each interacting, the sum of all the experiences will be great memories and great customer feelings around this. If we're good at mapping this towards the customer journey, we can actually translate that into a a more tangible tool wise decision once we are configuring this stuff, right? So that's when we leverage our playbooks and our processes and that whole thing. But enabling us with the CSM module from ServiceNow is actually a way of empowering these more soft kind of thinking around what is needed for bringing a great customer experience. And I think it's worth looking into if you are unfamiliar with CSM, or if you are familiar with it, see how can we actually heighten the experience? How can we make things a bit greater, both in terms of our employees and our end users alike? Because that together can really drive great experience and hence do better business. But that's a broad picture. That's the context of all of this. So enough about the abstract stuff which should drive this. Let's see how we can get a bit more tangible, right, Tavio? How do we go about handling this this journey, basically? Why can we do this stuff in ITSM? Maybe that would be the question.
Yeah, thanks, Mikkel. That was a really good introduction. I'd like to add a little bit to what you just mentioned about the customer experience. Even the services that we provide, we can deliver our services really well, but the customer experience can be the thing that differentiates us from our competitors. So keeping the customer satisfied and happy, even though we deliver the service in a great way, can make the difference between the customers staying with us or the customer perhaps switching to a different vendor. But if we talk about a little bit of the history of ServiceNow and CSM, some of this that I'm about to talk about is, or most of it is about IT service providers and IT management, which was initially done in the ITSM module, and how a lot of ServiceNow early adapters have started their business or their journey with ServiceNow using ITSM modules and ITSM processes. So a lot of these early adapters and companies are used to doing things in the ITSM way. And then, as the topic of today's webinar is, how do we migrate, or how do we go through the journey of migrating from ITSM to CSM? And first, to sort of set the scene or set the base for the topic, let's discuss just the standard ITSM processes. So very core ITSM processes are the four main ones. You have incident management, problem management, request fulfillment, and change management. And that is what ServiceNow's core was when it was initially released. You had these modules, and these were the tools that you used to fulfill your customers' requests, your customers' requirements. And over below all the topics, you'll have a short description of what they mean, but I'm sure that they are quite familiar to most of you already. So since these are the core functions of ITSM, I believe this quote summarizes our dilemma a little bit. So if the only tool you have is a hammer, it's tempting to treat everything as if it were a nail. What I mean by this, or how this quote fits into our scene, is that if you only have those four processes, the four tools that you have in your toolbox that you're allowed to use, you tend to think of everything that your customer asks from you through those four different boxes, those four lanes, processes, categories. You try to figure out, how does an incident solve this customer requirement? How does a change solve this? Instead of focusing on the customer experience. The customer is most likely not an ITSM pro, so their experience or their point of view is quite different. So if that's the setup from the previous world, I would say, where we have ITSM tools only, a lot of service desks had a lot of common issues. I would say one of the most common ones was that the customer had to initiate the process, and they could initiate the incorrect process. The customer might initiate the incident process, saying that I have an issue with this, and when the investigation of the incident begins, the technicians realize that actually there's nothing wrong. This was just the perception of the customer that something is broken. The reality is that they needed to request something. So the customer initiates the incorrect process without knowing the underlying framework or requirements. So what happens? The service desk opens a new record for example, the request fulfillment process. Then we come to the next dilemma or issue service desks face. The customer is unhappy because they receive a lot of notification or communication from multiple sources. So now they opened an incident, suddenly they receive a notification, the incident was closed, they receive another notification saying a request was opened, and then a requested item was commented, and so forth. And it's confusing to the customer because they don't perhaps know anything about your company or process before. So this easily leads to the confused customer, which is quickly a angry and at least unhappy customer.
Basically, you're stating that the ITSM process is maybe not fit for purpose here.
It requires a certain level of understanding from your customer, which is kind of a lot to ask. And we'll actually come back to that in a bit. I'll give an analogy of that, which I'm sure that everyone can relate to this afterwards. And then the final topic is using or final dilemma or issue is using the incorrect process can result in the incorrect SLAs, and it can also result in loss of revenue. Especially if you only have the ITSM tools, you usually have your customer agreements, your contracts, SLAs tied to those processes. And then if the customer initiates the incorrect process, they also initiate the incorrect SLA. And then I've even seen situations where customer invoicing or billing is based on what type of process is used. And that can result in, if the customer initiates the incorrect process, you're not allowed to invoice it or bill it from the customer because that specific process was considered to be free of charge or some situation like that. So what are the common solutions that were done in the past to remedy this situation? And then keep in mind, this was before the CSM module was in place or even available to anyone. So the most common solution or approach was that you customize the incident process usually to contain everything. And that is usually not a good approach because the incident process is supposed to be used for incident management, and heavily customizing that will result in another plethora of issues. And you still might end up with a non-optimal outcome. Then another approach would be to use the initial task as a parent for the correct task that needs to be opened. That technically can work, but all the processes have their limitations. Incidents are open for 7 days before they're closed, or 5 or 3, whatever days you define. And a request fulfillment process is closed immediately afterwards, typically. And having the parents have their own characteristics can result in confusing outcomes. And then the last and by far the worst solution is shadow IT. So basically, technicians, service desk, realizing that there are some processes that the system just doesn't handle or isn't capable of handling, and the customer realizes this as well. So those are done via email. They're done on the phone or chat or something, and no remark of that work or process is actually stored in the system, and no one else knows about it. And that's by far the worst situation. As I said just previously, that I think it's a tall task to ask the customer to know the ITSM processes, to know which process they should open. That's one of the reasons why customers outsource, for example, the IT management to IT outsourcing or vendors, providers, service providers, because they don't want to know the ITSM processes. Especially if we go into the consumer world, they definitely should not know what ITSM processes are or what they're used for. They should not have to have the knowledge to know that I need to open an incident in this situation and a change in that situation. All they're asking is, there's something that I need to communicate to you, my service provider. Please take care of my needs. So if we want to remedy this situation, we have a CSM point of view. And as I mentioned, I'll give an analogy of this. And this was actually provided by Nenad, who I think is joined here. Thank you so much. This is a great analogy. Consider that your business is a restaurant. This restaurant here.
I'd
now,
like to
how
go
you...
to your business, so then Tapio, I'll just add that, right? Looks really nice.
Thank you. So this is your business. Now, how you perceive it is a little bit different than your customer perceive it, actually quite a bit different. And what you expect out of it is drastically different from what your customer expects out of it. Now, if you look at the ITSM module and the processes and what that component of ServiceNow and any other tool that you might have used previously, what it represents is the kitchen of your restaurant. It uses multiple processes, as we just had a look at, to provide the service. It separates, this is ServiceNow specific, it separates the customer data through domain separation. It provides tools for automating your processes, for example, workflows and flows and so forth. And then it uses the industry standard methods, basically very close to ITIL processes. And this is good in that sense that that's commonly known even if you're coming from outside of ServiceNow. So a industry standard framework. Now, if we look at these things from a non-ServiceNow perspective, we're looking at it from your restaurant and your kitchen perspective. Your different processes that you use in your kitchen, they are, for example, how you fry things, or you boil things, or you cook things in your oven, and so forth. It's taking care of the management part of how do I deliver goods from my kitchen to the next phase, which is the CSM, which is the dining area of your restaurant. So the dining area would be the part where your customer interacts with your service providers. Instead of going to the kitchen and asking the chef, they communicate with a waiter. So in this case, or in this situation, CSM is like the waiter or the front end of your restaurant. And what the customer opens is a case. And from that case, if necessary, we can leverage the ITSM processes. So we can basically leverage our kitchen to provide the foods for our restaurants. Now, technically, how it differs from ITSM is that it separates the customer data through account visibility. So instead of creating multiple different domains, it limits visibility access so that only one customer is allowed to view that customer account's data. Now, CSM also provides tools for implementing custom service processes, not just customer, but custom service processes without the normal ways of IT or from before, where you'd have to create a custom table and custom everything. CSM offers you the ability to do that within the case management process.
So maybe,
and also,
sorry for just bumping in, but Johannes actually stated a question, and that's maybe correlating a bit to what you're talking about here. So Johannes asked basically, so we are a service provider. So how does CSM fit in there if we interact with the customers' ITIL processes? So that's basically the other way around, right? Do you have some thoughts around that, or maybe Nenad, you're watching and commenting? I can see that, so feel free to chime in as well if we have some insights into Johannes' question.
That's actually a really good question. Definitely, I'll come to that. 2 or 3 slides forward, and I'll give an example of,
all right, then
how you can interact that.
Till there then. Thanks.
Yeah, because that is a good point. You are a service provider when you're providing services to a customer's ITSM processes, and you still do deliver a service. So you do customer service even though you are a part of their ITSM process. You most likely are not the entirety of that process, and the CSM layer actually provides you really good flexibility into this. But I'll come back to that in just a bit.
That's perfectly fine.
Good. Then one more component that the CSM provides or gives really good tools for is identifying what services you provide to each customer. I would say that it has migrated quite much from the direction of we provide everything to all of our customers to our customers have the right to purchase whatever services they desire from us, and our agreements contain only those products or those services. And knowing that and having the system actually provide that information to your service desk personnel, your customer service agents, will benefit the customer experience drastically. A very common situation is that you have a customer who has, let's just use two examples. The other service that they've bought is mobile management, and the other one would be workstation management. And let's say that they only bought the mobile management, but not the workstation management from your company. Now, knowing this, even though your company can provide both services, but knowing that this specific customer bought only that service benefits the customer experience greatly, because you're able to identify that, okay, this specific service wasn't bought. Don't try to figure out why can't I have the components handed to me to fulfill this specific service. So now that we have this analogy in place, I'm sure that everyone can relate to the fact that the customer should not know the ITSM processes of their vendors or their service providers. As when you go to a restaurant, you do not need to know how the cook prepares, what recipe they use, what degree in the oven they have when they prepare your food. The only thing you should be telling your waiter is that please provide me this dish that I picked from the menu that you provided me. And I don't have to tell the chef that this is the way it's prepared. It should be already made ready for me so that I just pick what I want and I get what I ordered. So as we were talking about CSM being the layer there, and we now come to the question we just had, having the case there as the customer visible layer, first of all, it means that the customer will always open a case, which is great. Because in that situation, whenever you communicate with your customer, you communicate through the case. And that means that your customer will not receive notifications from incidents, changes, requests, and so forth. They will always receive the communication from one direction, from one record, which is the case. And they don't have to worry about, okay, where do I need to comment my additional information to, or where can I check the status of whatever I'm being delivered? It's always the case. That's where they will have the information that they need.
So that's basically the uniform touch point we were talking about, interactions on the customer journey. We want to make sure that we don't miss out a spot there.
Exactly. Yep. I think this is, in a way, going back to the roots. I think that ITSM tools started as ticketing tools, and it was just one type of record. And as the processes themselves mature, we separate that ticket into multiple different processes, but then we forgot about the customer experience, which was sort of good about the ticket, that the customer didn't have to know, what do I need to ask? They just opened a ticket, a request for service. And this provides the layer back. So basically, the customer just creates a case every time. And the communication is always done through the case. And then if you need to leverage internal processes, ITSM processes, you are able to do so. But if you don't need to, or if the customer request is something that is so simple that you don't actually need to initiate some of the ITSM process to fulfill this, you can just use the case. If we go back to our restaurant analogy, if the customer asks the waiter, what do you recommend from the list? You don't have a process in the kitchen for that. That's completely missing from the services. This is something that's just a simple interaction with the customer. This is customer service. And the ITSM tools do not provide means to handle this. So this is a way to step out or step away from the thinking that everything needs to be one of those 4 nails that we were looking at previously. And we can just interact with the customer in a natural way. And then if we need to use some of the processes that we have in the kitchen, then we can do that. So by doing this, we sort of separate what the customer sees and what we're able to provide and how we provide this. Now, to go back to the question before, if you are the service provider for our customers' ITSM processes, the customer can have a process in place. For example, they can have a problem management process in place, and you can be a part of it. You will be providing a piece of for example, the root cause analysis. And the customer's ITSM processes can be what they are. And all they ask from you is that please provide me a part of this RCA, part of this root cause analysis. And if you have the CSM layer there in place, the customer can have whatever process they have. They can integrate to your case management process, and then you can decide how you're going to process that. If you're able to provide the required information for the problem management process within the case management process, then you're free to do that. If you require to initiate something, for example, an incident or something else, then you're able to still do that. So you decouple your customer's process from your own processes, because you might have a different point of view on what you need to do. For example, if you just provide a little bit of information regarding a specific configuration item, a server, for example, to provide that information, you don't need to initiate the entire problem process. You only need to provide a little piece of information. So a part of a customer's problem process can be your customer service process.
So just chiming in again, Tapio, we have a question from Nelson, and I think I can actually address that to some extent. We had a license webinar, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago or something. Nelson is asking, do we need to purchase both ITSM and CSM modules if you use CSM for customer and ITSM for internal processes, or CSM includes core ITSM capabilities? I would say, though, this is going to be a political answer, right? Because the licensing TNCs has changed over time on this. So I would have to deep dive a bit more into what kind of version you have on your CSM licensing, assuming that you have one. So I would like to give you a good answer on that, but then I would just need to collaborate a bit on looking at the use authorization from ServiceNow to give you a correct answer. So Nelson, if you would like, drop us a note here and we'll reach out to you. We can deep dive into this. But in the broad answer would be that it kind of depends on the purpose of your ITSM processes and what they're serving up. So it's actually not a yes or no answer, looking from my part at least. I hope that is as good as it gets right now, but please let us know if we should reach out. We can, of course, give you a more firm answer in your particular case there. All right. Tip, you take it away from there then.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to the topic of separating what the customer sees and what you provide them, it's your recipes versus the dishes you provide your customer. How you internally provide the services, that's your ITSM side, that's your decision. And what you offer and how you represent them to your customer, that's the customer service part. And CSM provides really good tools to be able to adapt to your customers' requirements without having to change everything in your ITSM process in your backend or your kitchen to fulfill the customer's needs. Yeah, so again, by having these 2 layers, the customer service side and the ITSM side, this allows you to decouple them. You're able to agree with your customer that we will provide you this service, and if at the time of agreement you'll need to initiate a normal change to be able to fulfill that, that's fine, you'll do that. If in the future your processes mature and you're then able to create a standard change from it, that's completely fine. Again, you're able to provide that service faster, but you haven't tied your customer agreement to a specific process. And again, if in the future you're able to provide that even faster or automated, then again, you're able to allow your processes to mature and be more efficient without compromising what you've agreed with your customer. So what kind of tools does CSM offer? Here are some of the core components. So contracts and entitlements, through those you're able to identify what you have agreed with your customer, what kind of entitlements of how many, for example, support cases of a specific type, or how many capacity backups your system is allowed to do within a given period of time. And this allows,
Yeah, I just want to add, because this is about the business model, right? This is to ensure we don't over-deliver. Of course, we shouldn't under-deliver, but we should not either over-deliver, because then we have a sales game to get in there and make sure that we get the right contracts in place. And having that overview is really important in ensuring that you get exactly the service you're entitled to. Just wanted to add that, because that's business.
Exactly.
Business, right?
And the next box actually really well comes along with this. So the contracts are what you agreed, and the entitlements are something that can enrich that. You're able to define more in depth, for example, that we've agreed to provide 50 hours of service in this specific thing to the customer, and the system can calculate that. And when you go over that, you can go to the next entitlement, and you can use that to, for example, drive your invoicing. And then you have escalations and special handling notes, which are just really common tools from from the CSM module, which enrich the way your service desk agents are able to make the customer experience better. These are nothing that's super innovative in that sense that they don't automatically do things with AI. They actually just provide the correct information at the correct time. So when you're processing a case, if you have escalations for a specific customer, the customer service agent will receive notifications, will receive a pop-up saying that this customer or this service is being escalated, or it has a special handling note. And that is a really good note to what you just mentioned, where we have to think about sales as well, and that we don't over deliver, but we can do the not over delivering in a friendly way. For example, if your customer, like I mentioned before, they've bought only mobile services from you and not the workstation services, you can store that information in your system as special handling notes, and you can provide the extra effort of saying, if you want to have workstation support, you need to contact this other vendor that you've agreed. And that's knowing your customer better than you're expected to. Very small thing, a very, very minor thing. It'll help your customer service agent understand that, okay, we don't have the components in play for this customer and workstation management, and here's the reason why. Handle this in a way that the customer is still satisfied without actually fulfilling the requirement. And then we have sold products and product models. Sold products, as I mentioned before, you can have your products that you have standardized agreed with a customer that these are the products that we provide you. So through sold products, you are able to define, in this contract, we have these sold products, and these products they can be named according to your customer's requirements or demands. Sometimes customers can be quite picky, that they want to have a certain service called a specific thing because they are used to it. And then your backend, your kitchen is the same way, and they know the service in a specific way, so they want to have their naming as well. And this allows it to be decoupled again, so you can have your customer version of the product, which is called very happy password reset, and then your kitchen will just know it as password reset. And again, with the model structures, you can standardize things so that you're actually able to identify this service that we're providing to this customer is actually the exact same thing as we're providing the other customer. It's just named differently.
This is about meeting the customer, right? The customer feelings, all those emotions that we talked about earlier. How can we accommodate the special customer needs, and then still making sure that we're able to deliver it in a consistent and effective way, right? This is actually right down to the core of that question.
It's just very small, minor things which make the customer experience, the feeling of how you receive the service, a little bit better. And also, it'll help the customer service agents understand what's the situation, what's the landscape with the customer, what are the things that we have actually agreed. The service desk agents shouldn't be able to, or they should not have to know the customer agreement thoroughly. They should not know what the contracts in hold. The system should tell them that already. And then the final box or final tool that CSM offers is account team memberships. So again, going the extra mile, telling or storing in the system that this specific customer service agent is the first or the preferred agent for this customer. Within that customer organization, that person is the one responsible for infrastructure, and that person is responsible for invoicing and so forth. And you can define these memberships as you desire. And it's a way of kind of like labeling people or user accounts in the system, but without having to do customization. So how do you support non-ITSM processes? As we just talked about, if there's a customer in your restaurant, in the front of the restaurant, they're asking the waiter, what do you recommend? None of the ITSM processes fulfill this requirement. Or what if they complain? What if they say that this is too salty for me, or I don't like this? You can have a custom case type for a specific customer service process. For example, I think we've discussed this in previous webinars, where you can create an RMA process within case management. So technically, nothing was wrong. The customer just changed their mind. And if you've agreed that they're allowed to change their mind, then you need to have a process in play where you will basically define, how do we handle things like this? Now, instead of having to customize all of your case processes, you can just create a case type which handles that specific scenario. And it'll have the same features of normal case management, in that sense that you're able to have account restrictions, visibility restrictions, and the basic functionalities in play without having to start building everything from scratch. So what are our key takeaways? I would like to emphasize that even though we're talking about how CSM will do things in a way that the customer is more satisfied, CSM is usually there to enrich the customer service experience. You still can have, or need, in all of cases, just need to have the ITSM process in the back end. And if you've already done some of the development in your ITSM processes in-house, and you have really good standard changes and really good request fulfillment, CSM is just the layer to provide a good customer experience on top of that. Then the second takeaway is that use your custom case types so that you don't have to break the out-of-the-box processes, for example, the incident process, to make it completely different so that you can fulfill a customer need, or that you would have to resort to shadow IT. So you can create a custom case type, and you're able to provide a specific process to your customer that isn't widely known. And then lastly, this I think is very crucial to the really good customer experience, is that you know your customer. Now, usually this comes from having your customer service agent work with the customer for years and years, and they know them personally even. But that then means that your service is very tied to specific people. Instead, you can try to describe your customer in your system and allow the system to provide you the correct information when you need it, and to whomever is providing the service, so that you don't need to have someone sit in for a year before they understand how a specific customer works, or read through 10 different contracts to understand that for this customer we work in a different way. So know your customer and build the customer experience around it.
Thanks, Tapio. And I think basically anchoring your customer experience in a processual way, in a system that enables everyone to be rock stars around the customer is just so good in a sense of scalability, right? We want to make sure that everyone is able to do great customer service, not only the guys or girls that knows the customer on a personal level, right? So thank you all for great attendance to this. There has been a few questions. I hope we did address some of that. If you have something to add or questions at hand, please drop it in the chat right away. We can discuss it from there. Oh, there we go. Sorry, my screen just went weird. Here we go. We do sure hope that you'd gain something from this session. It's been a pleasure listening to your presentation, Tapio, and thank you very much for that. To all of you out there, thank you for your time.